4 or 5 years, AI will be 99% of the value of SpaceX. I'd say 5 years for sure. AI will be 99% the value of SpaceX. And the value of SpaceX will be some astronomical number.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Smart Tech Investing. Today, I wanted to show you something that I think most investors have completely missed. Most people look at SpaceX and they see rockets. Some people look at SpaceX and they see Starlink. But after watching this all hands, I think a much bigger story is starting to emerge. A story about AI, compute, and something called Starmind. And if the pieces fit together, then SpaceX may not just be building the future of space. It may be building one of the most important AI infrastructure platforms on the planet. But before I explain you that, listen in carefully to how Elon is talking about Starlink.
And then Starlink, it's like, well, if you've got a rocket that can fly a lot, what do you fly on it? And so the Starlink team has built from nothing an entire global internet system. And it's the first high bandwidth global internet system ever to exist. And I actually think that down the road, it'll probably be, I think it'll probably do a majority of the internet. In fact, I think it might end up doing over 90% of all internet traffic on Starlink.
When most investors hear Starlink, they think about satellite internet, a box on the roof, a monthly subscription, internet in remote areas. And that was the obvious story. But I think in all hands, Elon points to a much bigger idea. SpaceX may not be trying to connect people to the internet. SpaceX may be trying to rebuild the internet itself. That's a very different ambition. Because if Starlink becomes the global network above the planet, then SpaceX is not just selling connectivity, it is controlling a new layer of global digital infrastructure. And this is why I think Starlink needs more attention in this story. If you only think about Starlink as a broadband provider, the story is too small. The bigger question is who carries the internet when traffic becomes machine first? Wondering what I'm saying? Because think about it, we're entering into an era where the future internet may not just be people watching videos and opening websites. It may be AI agents communicating with numerous services or maybe databases or other apps, robots maybe, or vehicles, people in factories, and other AI agents. That means the number of requests could grow much faster than human usage. A human may open just 5 pages. For an AI agent, it will inspect hundreds of pages, maybe even thousands of things before actually giving you an answer. So, if AI becomes the new interface to the internet and the network becomes strategic, think about it. Is Starlink just a side story now? Starlink may be the transport layer for a future where machine uses the internet far more than humans could ever. The internet is changing fast. There are AI systems that search, they compare, summarize, they're able to code for you, they're able to complete your tasks. That is what people mean by when they say agentic internet. And this is the bridge I want you to remember. More AI agents means more requests. More requests means more data movement. And more data movement means more demand for the networks. And if the network is in space, SpaceX becomes much bigger than consumer internet service. Listen into how Elon explains the Cloudflare agentic internet study.
Cloudflare just recently mentioned that based on the current growth, they think probably AI traffic will be 1,000 times more than human internet traffic in 5 years.
And this is the most interesting part of the video. Here, I'm going to explain to you the SpaceX strategy. Think about it. If machine becomes the largest user of the internet, then connectivity demand does not grow like a normal consumer internet demand. It grows like a compute demand, which is fast, non-linear, and global. And this is where Starlink, Starship, AI revenue, Grok, and Starmind starts fitting into the puzzle. Because if AI agents create the traffic, Starlink moves the data, and Starmind eventually runs the intelligence. then SpaceX is building a full stack system, not just rockets, not just satellites, a system for the future of the internet. None of this will be possible without Starship. Most people look at Starship and just see a bigger rocket. I think that's the wrong frame. The real story is not the size, the real story is capacity. When launch capacity goes up, the economics of space changes. When cost falls, volume rises, new industries become possible. That's what happened with computing. That happened with storage too, and exactly the same thing that happened with bandwidth. And SpaceX may be trying to do the same thing for orbit. Listen into Elon where he explains what's going on with Starship.
Yeah, so Starship is obviously an incredible vehicle, um, and it's what will take us from roughly 2,500 tons to orbit per year to over 1 million tons uh, to orbit per year, and I think maybe even to 10 million tons per year. These are mind-boggling numbers. But I'd say it's highly likely we do over 1 million tons a year to orbit with Starship, and probably close to 10 million, which is mind-boggling, obviously.
And this is why I keep coming back to the word infrastructure. If SpaceX can move much more mass to orbit, then satellite becomes only the first step. After satellites, you can imagine bigger power systems, bigger compute systems, bigger communication systems, and even maybe an orbital AI infrastructure. This is exactly why Starship matters to the AI story, because you cannot build a space based AI network unless you can move massive amounts of hardware into space. Starship is the physical unlock, Starlink is the data unlock, and Starmind is the intelligence unlock. Quick pause before we continue. If you enjoyed these deep dives into SpaceX, Tesla, AI infrastructure, and long term investing, please like, subscribe, and share. And if you're on X, you can follow me at Smart Tech Money. I try to break down these complex technology and investment ideas using simple paper napkin logic so we can all understand the big picture with more confidence. And now, let's get back in. Let's hear from Elon about what he thinks about the AI revenue for SpaceX.
The wild thing is that probably our AI revenue, not probably, definitely, our AI revenue will exceed all other SpaceX revenue probably in September, like next month, and will significantly exceed all other SpaceX revenue in the fourth quarter. So it's AI has become an extremely important part of SpaceX's future. I think it's actually vital that we succeed in AI, not just in hardware, but also in software.
Now we get to the statement that completely changes the story. SpaceX is not talking about AI like a research project. SpaceX is talking about AI like a major revenue engine. And that is a very big shift. Because if AI revenue becomes larger than the rest of SpaceX revenue, then the investors, the way they value SpaceX has to change. It is no longer just launch services or just Starlink broadband. The center of gravity starts shifting towards AI infrastructure. This is one of those clips where I would not rush past the words. Because a company famous for rockets is saying AI may become the main business. That does not mean the execution is guaranteed. It does not mean the numbers will happen exactly as stated. But it does tell us how SpaceX is thinking. And when a company like SpaceX starts thinking this way, it means the opportunity they are seeing is massive. So the question becomes what kind of AI systems are they trying to build?
Assuming civilization continues to progress, I think that AI will probably, the amount of digital intelligence will probably be more than 1 trillion times the amount of biological intelligence. So not sort of equal to human intelligence, but probably a trillion times higher. I'd say a billion times is an easy prediction, and probably a trillion.
That intelligence comment matters because it explains the mindset behind everything else. SpaceX is not building a small AI future. SpaceX appears to be building an AI future that's extremely large at scale. And that brings us to Grok, because most people hear Grok and think it's a chatbot. That's too small. The bigger idea is that SpaceX wants AI to understand how SpaceX works. So, the engineering knowledge, manufacturing, launch knowledge, design knowledge, decision making knowledge. That is not just a chatbot. That starts to sound like a company wide operating brain. Listen into different release schedules for Grok from Elon.
Yeah, well, Grok 4.5 you've tried probably. We've got 4.6 coming out in about a week. And then 4.7 should be really pretty special. So I'd like to encourage everyone at SpaceX to use AI and to make it better.
Now, to be clear, there are real questions in my mind. What data is being used? How is it governed? How much of company knowledge actually becomes useful? Those details matter. But as an investor, the strategic point is simple. If Grok becomes intelligence layer and Starlink becomes the network layer, and Starship actually becomes the scale layer, then SpaceX is stacking capabilities on top of each other. And that is the kind of backward integration I'm not seeing with any other company. And this is where slide 8 becomes the real reveal. Here, everything starts to connect. We have Starlink for data, Starship for mass, Grok for intelligence, and now Starmind for space based AI compute. This is where the story moves from being interesting to being very serious.
This is, depending on what the value per watt is if the value per watt is probably going to be $30 to $50, which means if we bring 10 gigawatts of AI online by the end of next year, it will be $300 to $500 billion a year in revenue.
Training on the ground and inference in space, that line is the key. Training is where these models learn. Inference is where the model actually answers questions and perform your work. And if inference is enormous, then maybe SpaceX is asking a very different question. Why keep every part of AI infra on Earth if your network, power, and demand can actually be in orbit? That sounds futuristic. But this is why Starship and Starlink are not separate topics. They're the foundation that can actually make this possible. Listen into the revenue math from Elon. Now, I would treat these numbers carefully. This is not my forecast. This is not a guarantee. But it's still very important because it tells you the scale of the ambition. SpaceX is not talking about a small cloud service. They're talking about hundreds of billions in potential AI economics. And that is why this all hand matters. Because the stated ambition is not incremental. This is a civilizational scale infrastructure opportunity. Listen in from Elon where he talks about Starmine.
The factory for Starmind will be located nearby, or adjacent to us, basically. They just come from space. It's amazing. So, but long term, more not that far into the future, probably in 4 or 5 years, AI will be 99% of the value of SpaceX. I'd say 5 years for sure. AI will be 99% the value of SpaceX. And the value of SpaceX will be some astronomical number.
Starmind is the name that makes the whole story click. Starlink connects, Starship launches, and Starmind computes. If that system works, SpaceX starts looking less like a rocket company and more like a full stack AI infrastructure company. This is the final part in the end game. Long-term claim is that AI would become vast majority of SpaceX value. That is a shocking statement. But after this entire chain, it becomes easier to understand why SpaceX may believe it. Because SpaceX has something most AI companies do not have. It has launch capabilities, it has satellites, it has network infrastructure, and it has manufacturing at scale. And now it wants AI compute. That combination is why the story is worth watching. So here's my final key takeaway. Starship moves mass, Starlink moves data, and Starmind moves intelligence. And if all of these three layers work together, then SpaceX is no longer a space company. It could become one of the most important AI infrastructure companies in the world. Now, there are still big risks: execution risk, power risk, chip supply risk, and finally, most importantly, regulatory risk. And the fact that some of these ideas are still very early, but the direction is clear. SpaceX is thinking far beyond rockets, far beyond satellite internet, and far beyond normal data centers. They're thinking about the infrastructure layer for a world where AI becomes dramatically larger than what it is today. I'm Shikhar. Thank you for watching. If this helped you see SpaceX differently, please share this video with someone who still thinks that SpaceX is just a rocket company. And consider subscribing to my channel for more deep dives into technology, AI, and long term investing. Follow me on X at Smart Tech Money, and I'll see you on the next one.